I am Dr. Nikita Patel from CM Patel College of Physiotherapy, KSV University. My today's topic is balance. Contents of today's topics are introduction, components of balance, motor strategies for balance control, impaired balance, functional balance test, and references. Introduction. Now definition of balance. So balance is the condition in which all the forces acting on the body are balanced such that the center of mass is within the stability limits, the boundaries of base of support. There are two types of balance, static balance and dynamic balance. Now static balance. So the ability to control the body while the body is stationary, it is the static balance. Now dynamic balance. So the ability to maintain your center of gravity over a constantly changing base of support, it is the dynamic balance. So there are two types of balance. Now components of balance. So there are three components: somatosensory inputs, internal vestibular and external visual. So first one is the somatosensory inputs. So for the somatosensory inputs, there are proprioception senses is using. So it is your ability to sense changes in tension and velocity in your muscles. It is your ability to recognize your position in a given space. So that is the somatosensory inputs. Second one is the internal vestibular. So in this there is a vestibular stimuli you are using. So this is the balance provided by the inner ear. It helps the body stay aware of its spatial orientation. Third one is the external visual. In this there are visual stimuli you are using. So your body's ability to assess the external environment and orient accordingly. Now motor strategies for balance control. So there are 6 strategies: ankle strategy, weight shifting strategy, suspension strategy, hip strategy, stepping strategy and combined strategy. So these 6 strategies are using for control over balance. Now we are talking about the first is ankle strategy. So during small perturbations, movement at the ankle act to restore person's center of mass to a stable position. So in the ankle strategy is using whenever we are getting a small external perturbation. So maintain for the balance, ankle strategy is using. So if loss of balance in the forward direction, so muscle activations are from distal to proximal are gastrocnemius, hamstring and then paraspinal muscles. And if loss of balance in the backward direction, so muscle activations are from the distal to proximal anterior tibialis, quadriceps and then abdominal muscles. Now second one is the weight shifting strategy. Weight shifting strategy is mainly using in the lateral plane. So movement strategy utilized to control mediolateral perturbations involves the shifting of weight laterally from one leg to other. Key point of control is hip joint. They move center of mass through activations of side-to-side muscles like abductors and adductor muscles of hip joint and inverters and everters muscles. Now third one is the suspension strategy. So it is observed during the balance task when the person quickly lower his or her body center of mass by flexing knees, causing association flexion of ankle and hip. So whenever we are getting our balance losing, so at that time suspension strategy is working through flexing our knees simultaneously. Ankle and hip is also associated with in flexion position. Fourth one is the hip strategy. Hip strategy is mainly using like for the rapid and large external perturbations as we are getting. So at that time only and only hip strategies work. So there is a marked difference between ankle strategy and hip strategy is in the hip strategy is working when large external perturbations is occur, and in the small perturbation ankle strategy is working. So the hip strategies use hip flexion and extension to move the center of mass within the base of support. So for forward body sway muscles activations are from the proximal to distal is the abdominals and then quadriceps. But in the backward body sway muscles are activation from the paraspinals followed by hamstring muscles. So again there is a difference between ankle strategy and hip strategy is that in the ankle strategies the muscle activations are from the distal to proximal, but in the hip strategies the muscle activations are from the proximal to distal. Now fourth is a stepping strategy. If a large force displaces the center of mass beyond the limits of stability, a forward and backward step is used to enlarge the base of support and regain balance control. So if we are losing our balance, so at that time one step ahead and one step backward is using, like uncoordinated steps to maintain our balance. Now sixth one is a combined strategy. Most healthy individuals use combination of all strategy to maintain balance depending on the control demands. So if any one of strategy is missing or impaired, it results in the impaired balance. So these six strategies we are using to maintain our balance, and these all strategies are equally important like one and other. Now impaired balance. What is the impaired balance and when it occurs? So impaired balance can be caused by injury or disease to any structures involved in three stages of information processing. So three stages are like sensory input, sensory motor integration and motor output. If any one of these point is missing, so it results in an impaired balance. Now we are talking about first sensory input impairment. So proprioceptive deficits have been implicated as contributing to balance impairment following lower extremity and trunk injuries and pathology and decreased joint position sense. So if anyone having a problem in the lower extremity or in anyone having a problem with trunk injury, so it results in a proprioception deficits. So it ultimately there is a sensory input impairment occur. So it results in an impaired balance. And another like visual vestibular deficits are occur, so it results in again sensory input impairment. It results in impaired balance. Now second one is the sensory motor integration. Sensory motor integration is mainly occurred by the basal ganglia, cerebellum and supplementary motor area. So if any one of part is impaired, like anyone having the basal ganglia impairment, so it results in impaired balance. Cerebellum is affected, so it results in impaired balance. If supplementary motor area is affected, so it again results in impaired balance. So any one of area is affected of the brain, so it results in the impaired balance. Third one is the motor output deficits. Deficits in motor components of balance control can be caused by musculoskeletal and neuromuscular system impairments. So it results in the impaired balance. So fourth one is the deficits with aging. If age is increased, so it results in sometimes impaired balance. So falls are common and major cause of morbidity and mortality in persons aged over 65 years. So if patients or persons, anyone having impairment in the sensory inputs, either impairments in the sensory motor integration, either impairments in the motor output, so any one of part is missing, so it results in impaired balance. Now most common risk factors are like muscle weakness, history of falls, gait and balance, visual deficits, arthritis, depression, cognitive impairments. These are the common risk factors for impaired balance. Now we are talking about the functional balance test. Functional test of the balance is mainly focused on these four criteria. First is the maintenance of posture, that is a static balance. Second one is the balance during the weight shifting or voluntary movement, we call that is a dynamic balance. Third one is a balance responses to manual perturbations, and fourth one is a functional mobility. So these four criteria we are depending on the functional balance test. Now these are the gradings for functional balance test. So there are four grading: normal, good, fair and poor, and we divide into static and dynamic balance. Both are different things. So whenever in the static balance, able to maintain steady balance without handhold support, so that we grade that is a normal. Able to maintain balance without handhold support and only limited postural sways occurred, so we call that is a good grade. Able to maintain balance with handhold support and require occasionally minimal support, that is a fair. Requires handhold support and moderate to maximal assistance to maintain position, that is a poor grade. In the dynamic balance, accepts the maximal challenge and can shift weight easily within a full range in all the directions, that is grading as a normal. Accepts moderate challenge and able to maintain balance while picking object off the floor, that is a good grade. accepts minimal challenge and able to maintain balance while turning head and trunk, that is a fair grade, and unable to accept challenge or move without loss of balance, that is poor grade. So there are 4 grading and it divides in static and dynamics, both are different things. Now we are talking about the functional balance test. So there are 8 tests. First is the Romberg, second one is a functional reach test, third one is a multidirectional reach test, fourth is a time get up and go test, fifth is the Berg balance test, sixth is the POMA scale, seventh is a time walking test, and eighth is a balance efficacy test. Now we are talking about the Romberg test. Mainly Romberg test is used for the proprioception contributions for the upright balance to check out the proprioception and also for the diagnosis of the different types of ataxia like sensory ataxia or cerebellar ataxia. Okay. Now procedure. The patient is instructed to stand with feet together and eyes open for 20 to 30 seconds. If the patient falls with eyes open, then test is over. But if patient maintains his balance with the eyes open, then further test is through the eyes closed. In a negative test, there is only minimal sway with the eyes closed. But if the test is positive, the patient is able to stand with eyes open, but increase instability or falls with the eyes closed. Now conclusion and differentiation with the sensory and cerebellar ataxia. In the sensory ataxia, what happens? The patient can able to maintain his balance with the eyes open, but patient cannot maintain his balance with eyes closed. So we can say that is patient having maybe the sensory ataxia. But if patient having unsteadiness occur with the eyes open also with eyes closed, so both in the eyes open and eyes closed, in the both cases patients having not maintaining his balance and there is chances of fall, so that is the chances of patient having chances of cerebellar ataxia is there. Now second one is a functional reach test. It is developed by the Duncan and co-workers. Use of this functional reach test is to provide the quick screen of balance problems in older adults, mainly for the older adults. Now procedure. It is the maximum distance one can reach forward beyond the arm's length while maintaining a fixed base of support in a standing position. The test uses a level of yardstick mounted on the wall and positioned at the height of patient's acromion. So we are taking the yardstick at the acromion process, the patient at the size of the acromion process. So we have to maintain or we have to differentiate through the every person wise height wise we have to maintain or changing the yardstick. The patient stands sideways next to the wall without touching. Feet normal stance, width and weight equally distributed on both feet. The shoulder is flexed to 90-degree, elbow extended with hand twisted. So this is the position of the patient for checking out the functional reach test. Now how to take the measurement. So reference point is the third metacarpal. So initial measurement is made position at the third metacarpal along with the yardstick. Second measurement is taken at the using the third metacarpal for the reference. Now subtraction from the initial measurement from the second measurement. These are the normal criteria or normal measurements for according to age wise. We can take it as a reference. Now third one is a multi-directional reach test. Use of this test allows for the analysis of patients' voluntarily postural control. It is used to evaluate how far patients are able and willing to lean away from the stable base of support in multiple directions, in all the directions, forward, backward and sideward, left or right. And functional reach test is only in the forward directions. We can check. Equipment is only yardsticks. Starting position. So position a yardstick at the level of the patient's acromion process. This may be achieved by affixing the yardstick to the wall, same as the functional reach test. Participant stands with feet shoulder width apart and arm raised to 90 degrees. Now procedure, how to take. The patient is instructed to reach as far as possible without letting their feet raise off the floor, without losing their balance or their hand touch to the yardsticks. Location of the reference point is the middle finger, but in the functional reach test that is a third metacarpal. Trial distance is obtained by subtracting the end number from the starting position number. Then perform one another trial and then take the measurement. Repeat similar protocol for each all the directions like backward, left and right side. So multi-directional reach test is occurred in forward, backward, left and right. Every 4 directions we have to check out the balance of patients. These are the reference for the normal criteria for forward, backward, right lateral and left lateral direction. Now fourth one is a time get up and go test. It develops by the Mithias et al. It is a quick measure of dynamic balance and mobility. It's for the only for dynamic balance. Procedure. The patient is seated comfortably in a firm chair with arms and back resting against the chair. The patient is then instructed to rise, stand momentarily and then walk 3 meters towards a wall at normal walking speed. Turn without touching the wall. Return to chair, turn and sit down. Tap is used to mark walking distance and turning point. Timing with stopwatch begins when the patient is instructed with go and ends when patients return to start position in the chair. So for the test we have that is a chair, 3 meter distance and stopwatch. These things are necessary for the test. Now scoring for get up and go test. There are 4 scores: normal, very slightly abnormal, mildly abnormal, moderate abnormal and severe abnormal. Conclusion of this. So less than 10 seconds, if we have to cover 3 meter distance within the less than 10 seconds, then it indicates normal for the adults. 11 to 20 seconds, that is a normal for the elderly patients and disability, individual persons with the disability, that is a normal. But more than 30 seconds are indicate impaired functional mobility. So we can conclude through this. Now fifth is a Berg balance test. It is developed by the Catherine Berg. Use of this is a clinical test of person's static and dynamic balance abilities. Procedure. The test takes 15 to 20 minutes. Comprises a set of 14 simple balance related tasks ranging from the standing up from sitting position to standing on one foot. There are 5 grading or scoring procedures from 0 to 4. There is a description. There is a 4 is independently, patient can perform the task independently, and 0 is patient cannot able to perform the task. Conclusion of this, there is a score 56 is the maximum points. Score 45 or below, that is associated with high risk of fall. Each 1 point drop in score in ranging from 54 to 36 is associated with 6 to 8% increase in fall of risk. The modified Berg balance scale having maximum score is 36. So there is a difference between Berg balance scale and a modified Berg balance scale. This is the Berg balance scale. There are 14. 0 that means not able to perform any task, and 4 means patient can perform independently. There are 14 different tasks and maximum score is a 56. Then POMA scale, Performance Oriented Mobility Assessment Scale. It is developed by the TINETI. Use of this test is it provides brief and reliable measure of both static and dynamic balance. Procedure. The items are organized into 2 subtests of balance and gait. There are 2 criteria in this test. That is, the first one is a balance and second one is a gait. There are scoring items. In some scoring there is a 0 and 1, only 2 scores or only 2 scales, and in the other one there are 3 points, 0, 1 and 2. The original POMA 1 scale has total possible score of 28. Patients who score, now scoring, how to score. So patients who score less than 19 are considered at high risk for falls. Those who score between 19 and 24 are at a moderate risk for falls. A revised form, the POMA 1A, includes 5 additional items and was designed for use as a predictor for fall among community dwelling elders with total possible score of 40. That is a POMA 1A new score. This is the POMA scale, in which there is a 11 for balance task, and for gait there are 6 tasks. and maximum score is 28. Now time walking test. Use of this test, it is important part of the examination of postural control and functional mobility. In this time walking test, either we have to fix the time or we have to fix the distance for the time walking test, because we have to conclude, or we have to measure the patient's speed of measurement, or energy cost we can measure through this test. The patient is asked to walk at his or her preferred speed over a set distance, clearly marked on the floor. Like example, 10-minute walk test. Or if we are taking the measurement, then there is a 33 feet, and we are taking the minute or time, that is a 10 minute or 15 minutes, and we are taking the measurement, then 33 foot or 50 feet. The patient is then asked to walk again a maximum speed as fast as possible. Time is measured using a stopwatch. Results are reported in a speed, that is a meter per second. Taken 2 trials and then compared. So normal young healthy adults, that is a 1.2 to 1.5 meter per second, that is the speed of this, and old people, that is a 0.9 to 1.3 meter per second. We also call that is the energy cost of person. Now last one is the balance efficacy test. So use of it is a self-report measure that examines how confident an individual feels while performing items of daily functional mobility and ADL tasks, both with or without assistance. So is mainly used for the ADL task independency for the patients. So procedure, it includes all these daily activities like getting out of chair, walking up down to stairs, getting out of bed, getting in and around, walking on uneven ground, standing on one leg and reaching for an object. Individual ask the balance confident they feel without losing balance. It ranging from the 100% to 0%. 100% that is absolutely confident, and 0% that is not confident at all. Now conclusion, items scored below 50% that indicates low confidence and may serve as a focus for intervention. So through these tests we can give an intervention, how and in which criteria we can give the intervention of the patient through these tests. These are the references. Thank you.